Hey, what's up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, bringing you all another Market Watch episode. So this weekend that just passed was actually a crazy one for everyone in the Yu-Gi-Oh community. We just had Maximum Gold released to us, which is an amazing set that has a ton of really cool reprints and an awesome new rarity that I know people have been looking forward to for quite some time. But at the same time, we just had the first big event since the release of Phantom Rage with the LCS tournament, which featured the sudden emergence of the Virtual World deck, which basically took the entire tournament by storm. Between all of these things, there is so much hype going on around the community at the moment, and we are definitely seeing that reflected with a ton of price movements all over the market, which we are going to break down in today's episode. Let's get started. Okay, so to kick things off, let's take a look at the biggest card to come out of Maximum Gold, and that is the Blue Eyes White Dragon. Now this card with the new gold rare technology actually looks really amazing and beautiful, so much so that people right off the bat are talking about how this card is a classic that is going to appreciate considerably in value over time. I think that the most comparable version of this card would be the Ghost Gold Rare from Gold Series 5, which is now over $100 for a single copy, which is pretty insane. Anyways, according to one of the sources that gave info to House of Champs, both Blue Eyes White Dragon and Dark Magician are actually relatively hard to pull from this set compared to the other gold rares, which is making them even more sought after. Now, while this card was initially $10 to $15 on release, they are now up at the $28 mark. I think that everyone is expecting this card to go up in price over time, and so they are starting to buy out the card early, which is why this price jump feels really unexpected and kind of out of place, combined with the news that this card is harder to pull than other things in the set. And it's definitely a sort of overreaction by the collector's market. The card I think that this is most comparable to is the Lost Art Dark Magician Girl, which jumped up repeatedly for the first couple of weeks after its release and was at one point up at $75 to $80, but has since then cooled off down to around the $40 to $50 mark. In both cases, we're seeing people try to buy out cheap copies of the card too early without letting any sort of time pass, and so there's a lot of extra quantities just floating around on the market, which will keep the price relatively low, which makes the prices unstable and volatile in the short term. I think that we can expect a slight dip in the price of Blue Eyes White Dragon in the short term, maybe down to around the $20 mark over the next few weeks. Ultimately, however, in the long run, the prices are still going to go up over time. It just might take a little while to get there. If you're looking to invest in this card, set a solid level as to how much you would be willing to spend on a single copy, and then even if the market price increases because people are trying to hype up the card, let the market correct itself back down first and wait to buy on the eventual dip. Alright, so one of the biggest surprises to come out of Maximum Gold was the reprints to Kitchen and Nurse Dragon Maid, two of the most expensive cards from the Dragon Maid deck that were released back in Mystic Fighters. Now, both of those two cards were short printed, and Kitchen was up at almost the $60 mark for quite some time, which made it very difficult for people to put the deck together, which was unfortunate because as a waifu archetype, there were definitely a lot of casual players who were looking to pick it up. However, with the reprints to Kitchen and Nurse Dragon Maid in Maximum Gold, this definitely made the core much more affordable, as you can now pick up each of those cards for only a couple of dollars a piece. With only a few cards reprinted in Maximum Gold though, people now have to go and pick up other key pieces of the strategy, and one that people looked at right away is Dragon Maid Hospitality. This is a card that was already up at the $10 mark, as people were using a small Dragon Maid engine in the Dragon Link deck. Hospitality happens to have been a short printed super rare from back in Mystic Fighters as well, and since it wasn't reprinted in Maximum Gold, due to the sudden increase in demand, it is now all the way up at $30 each, which is insane for a card that is just a super rare. I believe that this is actually now the most expensive card in the entire strategy. Now, unfortunately, I don't really see where they would reprint Hospitality anytime soon. Maybe if we're really lucky, Konami will be nice and give it to us in an OTS tournament pack as a common or something like that, but who knows, we can't really count on that. If you want to play Dragon Maids, hopefully you have your copies already. It's probably something that you're gonna want to run at 3, so you might need to spend like almost $90 on a set, which kind of feels bad. Hopefully you have a friend who has a couple of extra copies lying around that you will be able to get off of them for relatively cheap. Another Dragon Maid card to briefly mention here is Dragon Maid Shou, an ultra rare from Eternity Code. This card actually jumped up in price out of nowhere from being only $1 or $2 before to now being a $7 card. This is something I definitely did not see coming. I feel bad because I moved mine for like $2 each not that long ago, Anyways, because it just has the one printing, it was definitely targeted after the rest of the Dragon Maid reprints were confirmed. Now, I'm not an expert on Dragon Maids by any means, but I assume that it's a somewhat useful card in the strategy. However, I am definitely not expecting Dragon Maids to be meta by any stretch of the imagination. Therefore, I would expect to see the price of Shou cool off fairly quickly, back down to around the $3 to $4 mark each. Hopefully you guys are able to offload them fairly quickly if you happen to still be sitting on a few copies. This is definitely the sort of card that you want to move while you can, while there's still a few people hyping the card up and actively trying to pick them up. Next up, we have Virtual World Maihime Lulu. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I was definitely not expecting Virtual World to have the sort of showing that it did at the LCS from over the weekend. To be honest, I wasn't expecting the deck to see any sort of competitive success until after we saw hits to Dragon Link and Infernoble Knights on the upcoming ban list. Apparently, however, a lot of people have been really big on the deck and they've been playtesting with it, and it really showed at the event. At the LCS, only 23 of the 208 players entered were playing the Virtual World strategy, but the deck took 7 of the top 16 slots, which just goes to show how crazy strong the deck is. I don't know too much about it myself, but I'm definitely intending to learn how to play it. My understanding of it so far is that it turbos into True King of All Calamities, which I guess is pretty fair. Anyways, last market watch we saw Lulu up at $10 each, which I thought was kind of high because I thought the deck wasn't going to be good right off the bat. I thought we were going to see it calm back down in price, but I was definitely wrong there, as Lulu is now up at the $20 mark a piece. It is of course a 3 of in the Virtual World deck, basically functioning as a Stratos for the strategy. Obviously, this deck is pretty legit, so there's actually a really solid chance that it stays up at the $15 to $20 mark for quite some time, kind of like what we're seeing from Ecclesia right now being a key 3 of ultra rare monster for a meta relevant archetype. Of course, it will also depend on how the deck is treated on the ban list and whether or not we see True King of All Calamities get banned, as well as how the meta shapes up around the deck now that it's on everyone's radar. If I had to guess, I think that Virtual World will continue to be a pretty strong force in the TCG meta for the next year or so, especially with the theme getting so much more support in the next couple of sets. So if you're going to want to play the deck anyways, you may as well go ahead and pick up your copies before they get any more expensive. So this one is going to feel really random, but the ultimate rare version of Gaia Dragon the Thunder Charger actually just saw a buyout over the weekend. This is a card that is used by a lot of Virtual World players as an Xyz monster that you can put over top of one of your rank 5 or 6 monsters for free. It's basically just a 2600 attack point body that can pierce, so it can help if you're pushing for damage or you're looking to win the game in time. Now the deck can go into different rank 6 monsters fairly easily, and it usually does play a couple of them as extra deck utility options, so Gaia Dragon is another card that you can choose to run. I don't think it's a staple, and it's definitely not the type of card that you're going to be going into every game, but because it has made its way into a number of different deck lists from Virtual World players that topped the LCS, of course it was targeted for a buyout. Now this card was only $20 to $25 before, nothing too crazy. It did spike all the way up to $85 or $90 at one point, but now it's back down to around the $70 mark. I definitely think that this is still way too high for this card. It's just that because this card came out way back in Astral Pack 7, it might be a little while before this card cools back down completely and quantities come back onto the market. Now I am expecting it to settle at around the $40 to $50 range, as it is more of a situational tech choice than a key card in the strategy. If you want to play the deck, remember that the card does have a couple of other printings, so you can still get them for under $1 or so. You do have those options available. However, if you can offload this ultimate rare card at this crazy hyped up price, then I think now is definitely the time to cash in on it. Speaking of rank 6 utility options, number 39 Utopia Beyond is another extra deck monster that can be played in the Virtual World strategy. I believe that this card's primary function is to help you get through Red Eye's Dark Dragoon, as Utopia Beyond allows you to reduce the attack power of all monsters your opponent controls to 0, allowing you to run it over, so it's essentially non-targeting and non-effect destruction removal, as long as you manage to burn through the Red Eye's Dragoon negate. Now this card actually was just beginning to creep up in price over the last couple of weeks, since it was only available in the new Challenger set and the Megatins from that year. However, the card was just reprinted in Maximum Gold as a gold letter rare. The holos are actually all the way up at $7 to $8 each, while the rares you can get for only 20 cents or so. So if I needed to play the card, I would definitely be using the rares and then offloading all of my holo versions. Keep in mind, however, that this is a numbered monster still, so there will still be a reasonable amount of demand for the holo version as opposed to the non-holo version. Nevertheless, I would still be looking at offloading any extra copies that you happen to have lying around while there's some hype for the card. Alright, so this is a really cool card that I didn't see coming. Huge shout out here to Landon from Team Genesis. He's been doing a ton of testing with the Virtual World deck, and I wouldn't have known about this card without him. Now, X-Saber Godems is a synchro monster from the X-Saber strategy that allows you to tribute an X-Saber monster to discard a random card from your opponent's hand. Now, of course, Godems can tribute itself, and this effect isn't a hard once per turn. It just so happens that Godems is also a level 9 synchro monster, so it's something that can be made by the Virtual World deck. Quick side note here, Godems is, I think, the only synchro monster that can actually be made without having to use a non-tuner. It doesn't have the non-tuner requirement in the materials there. That's beside the point. Anyways, a really cool thing that I saw Landon do with his Virtual World deck was make Godems to rip a card from the opponent's hand and then use Cloud Castle to revive the Godems and do it again. Obviously right now with cards like Smoke Grenade of the Thief and Chaos Dragon Levianeer, we know how strong it can be to tear cards from your opponent's hand before they have a chance to play at all, so the fact that the Virtual World deck can hand rip makes the deck even scarier than it already was looking. Now, the card was only available at 2 different times, as an ultra rare and ultimate rare from the Ancient Prophecy set, and as a secret rare from the 2009 tins. Of course, with only 2 printings that are over a decade old, the quantities of this card are quite scarce on the market. For the ultimate rare, you're looking at $60 or so for the unlimited version and about $100 for the first edition, and even for the secret rares, you're looking at around $15 a piece. Of course, I wouldn't recommend buying this card at these ridiculous prices, especially the ultimate rare version, though they do look really nice. I think that the question we have to look at here is whether or not this is going to be the most optimal version of the Virtual World deck. From the LCS, none of the lists that topped were playing Godems at all, though I don't know if this is because the card just isn't as known or isn't as popular, or if the play is just viewed as being less consistent and suboptimal. Either way, it's definitely a card for you guys to keep an eye out for and snag if you can grab them for cheap, or offload if you happen to be sitting on a few extra copies. An interesting card that I want to discuss here briefly is Pot of Desires, specifically the ultimate rare version. So Pot of Desires is a card that we haven't seen too much play from recently, as it isn't typically run in decks like Dragon Link, Infernoble Knights, or Dogmatica Invoked. However, the card is a staple 3-of in Virtual World decks, as the deck consists of so many different 3-ofs that sort of function as interchangeable combo pieces that you aren't really concerned about banishing any specific cards outside of like the driver or banishing 3 copies of the same thing. What's interesting to me is that with the sudden spike in demand for Pot of Desires, it's actually the ultimate rare from OTS Tournament Pack 11 that has gotten bought out, and not the collector's rare. With the collector's rares, we've seen the unlimited still at around $70 and the first ed's up at $100 a piece. This is actually around what they've been at for the last little while, though over time they've actually declined in price, but with the ultimate rares they've actually shot up from being around $70 up to the $100 mark that they're currently at. This is a really significant price jump, and I think it gives the indication that when it comes to max rarity, people are looking more towards ultimate rares than the collector's rares, which is worth noting for future trends. Honestly, I'm not too surprised that Ulti Desires hit this price point. I'm more surprised that it took so long to reach this price point in the first place. I think that Desires could continue to increase in price to around the $120 to $130 mark because it is the max rarity version of a generic staple spell card. If you're looking to play the ulti, hopefully you were able to get them a little while ago when I talked about them a few months ago, or maybe you'll still be able to pick them up for around $70 to $80 a piece because they definitely have a lot of potential to continue to trend upwards in price. Alright guys, that is it for today's episode. Now I definitely wasn't expecting Virtual World to take off the way it did, but the deck has certainly proven itself. It'll be interesting to see if the deck can keep up this momentum moving forward, with everyone now prepared for it. I'm also really excited because I should finally be getting my cases of Maximum Gold in the mail this week. I'm hoping for a ton of crazy misprints, so please guys, share some of your luck with me. Anyways, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch episode, please make sure that you hit that thumbs up button for me to let me know. Also, make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what else is going on with the market that maybe I missed, so I can cover it in a future episode to keep you guys as informed as possible. Also, if you haven't already for whatever reason, make sure you hit the subscribe button for all of the latest and greatest content from both Tombox and myself here on the channel. And until next time, guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.